Hello, my name is Amy Rofail, and this is the Friday Red Alert Report for the Jerusalem Connection. In the most recent weeks, what has been trickling into the news is the significant uptick in violence and terrorism on the streets of Jerusalem and in other parts of Israel. Now, I'm going to speak more about this and its media coverage next week, but I wanted to focus today on one particular element that I think needs some attention. Normally we discuss issues of antisemitism and BDS, corporate and institutional discrimination against the Jews. But today I want to just talk a moment about how antisemitism is relayed from generation to generation, how it is rebirthed with every new generation and carried on to a new set of terrorist activities. And I want to discuss this because this week a very disturbing video went viral wherein a Palestinian father was videotaping his young daughter, preschool-age daughter, wielding a knife, and she was expressing how much she wanted to kill a Jew and stab a Jew. And her father would then say, Allah willing, this would be what you get to do. Now, to paraphrase Nelson Mandela, indeed, you can judge a society, or at least assess it, based on how it treats its children. And in the West, it's very difficult for us to wrap our minds around any parent wanting anything other than life and peace and abundance for their children. Yet, in some parts of the worldview is quite different, and a culture of death and a culture of blood is the norm, and not a culture of life and of peace. That jihad is the goal rather than peace and prosperity and freedom. This is particularly disturbing because this is how anti-Semitism can creep into any generation, and what's most unique in our day and age is that we can now see it documented. It's recordable. Other instances that are documenting this anti-Semitism being spread as a cancer from the older generation to the new is also seen in a website called Palestinian Media Watch. You can go to that website and you can see the various preschool curriculums in the Palestinian territories and in the Gaza Strip that teach, sing songs with Barney-like characters and develop a sense of normalcy for the children that living in a state of war, shedding blood, death, these are all glorious things. And this is not what the Jews, the Israelis, the Christians, or most other parts of the world actually teach their children. And that is why it is so difficult for us to believe that this is actually the case. When a moral relativism is placed upon the Palestinians by the West, where they say that they just want to live and they just want to raise their families, it's important to realize that we're imposing our worldview on their perspective, which isn't the case. If that were the case, then their argument would be valid. Now, obviously, there are families, mothers and fathers in the Palestinian territories who do truly only want peace for their children, love and freedom and abundance, and not a culture of war and a culture of death. That's absolutely true. But the problem is that the leadership and the majority of the atmosphere seems to be to teach the children hate and death, particularly that the blood of the Jews can run deep into the sand and that no people outside their own religious perspective can live on that land, or at least try to live on that land peacefully. So the reason why I want to discuss this today is because I want you all to be aware when you're watching the news and watching what's going on, the level of youth in the Palestinian Authority that are taking up the arms and are obeying the call of the elder generation to stab the Jews, kill the Jews, and they use the ruse of occupation and the false rumors about the Dome of the Rock to get their youth to follow these paths. And a culture of lies, a culture of deceit, a culture of death, and a culture of blood, this is purely satanic. And we must combat it. And it is unfortunate that the Jewish people are the front lines, the Jewish citizenry, the civilians, the children, the elderly who walk on the streets of Jerusalem and in other communities. They are the forebearers. They are feeling the brunt of this violence and hate. And we can't just sit by and watch. We must act. We must pray. We must take an active role in our own policies, elections, and politics that support the Israeli people, and not let lies filter into our media and into our communities when we are talking about these issues with our friends and family. Anyway, I want you to all be aware of this, that anti-Semitism starts and is fed and nurtured, just like a child is born and fed and nurtured. And it needs to be stopped. Shabbat Shalom.